27 months ago, Russia launched its aggressive invasion of Ukraine, which has drawn global condemnation. Today it seems the war has reached a stalemate. In this video, we'll give you a brief overview of the conflict. Stay tuned. The conflict between Russia and Ukraine has deep historical roots, tracing back centuries. The most recent phase began in 2014, but tensions have existed for a long time. Ukraine was part of the Soviet Union until its dissolution in 1991. After gaining independence, Ukraine sought to establish itself as a sovereign state distinct from Russia. However, Russia often viewed Ukraine as within its sphere of influence due to the cultural, historical, and political ties. Following the collapse of the Soviet Union, Ukraine aimed to solidify its independence and sought closer ties with Western Europe and NATO. This shift was perceived as a threat by Russia, which saw NATO's eastward expansion as a direct challenge to its security and influence in the region. One critical factor contributing to the tension is Ukraine's ethnic composition. According to the 2001 Ukrainian census, around 17% of the population identified as ethnic Russians, particularly concentrated in the southern and southeastern parts of the country, including Crimea and the Donbas region. In Crimea, ethnic Russians make up about 58% of the population. Russia has used the pretext of protecting ethnic Russians and Russian speakers as part of its justification for its actions in Ukraine. The situation dramatically escalated in 2014 when Ukraine's president, Viktor Yanukovych, seen as pro-Russian, was ousted following mass protests over his decision to reject an association agreement with the European Union. The protests, known as the Euromaidan movement, led to significant political instability in Ukraine. In response to Yanukovych's ousting and the perceived threat to its influence in Ukraine, Russia illegally annexed Crimea. Crimea has a long history of strategic and cultural importance to Russia. Historically, it was part of Russia until 1954, when it was transferred to the Ukrainian SSR by Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev. Despite this transfer, Crimea retained a significant Russian ethnic and cultural identity. In late February 2014, Russian soldiers without insignia began seizing key locations in Crimea, including airports and government buildings. This was followed by a controversial referendum on March 16, 2014, in which Crimean authorities claimed that 97% of voters chose to join Russia. The referendum was conducted under widely criticized conditions, with reports of voter coercion and the absence of independent observers. On March 18, 2014, Russia formally annexed Crimea, a move condemned by Ukraine and the international community. The United Nations General Assembly passed a resolution affirming Ukraine's territorial integrity and declaring the referendum invalid. The annexation led to significant geopolitical consequences, including severe economic sanctions against Russia by the United States, the European Union, and other Western nations. The annexation of Crimea marked a significant escalation in the Russia-Ukraine conflict. In the same year, pro-Russian separatists in the Donbas region of eastern Ukraine declared independence, leading to an ongoing conflict supported by Russia. The ethnic Russian population in these regions has been cited by Russia as a reason for its support of the separatist movements. Tensions remained high in the following years, with numerous ceasefires and peace agreements attempted but ultimately failing to bring lasting peace. The conflict saw periodic escalations and continued loss of life, creating a humanitarian crisis in the region. In early 2022, the situation took a critical turn when Russia launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine. The reasons behind this invasion are manifold and include Russia's desire to prevent Ukraine from joining NATO, to impose greater control over its neighboring region, and to challenge what it perceives as Western intervention in its traditional sphere of influence. The presence of ethnic Russians and Russian speakers in Ukraine has continued to be used by Russia as a justification for its military actions. When Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine on February 24, 2022, it anticipated a rapid and decisive victory, similar to its previous military engagements in Ukraine in 2014 and Georgia in 2008. However, the situation quickly proved to be far more challenging than Russia had expected. Russian forces advanced swiftly in the early days of the invasion, capturing significant territories in southern and eastern Ukraine and threatening the capital, Kiev. The Russian military strategy seemed geared toward a quick takeover, with the expectation that the Ukrainian government would collapse under the pressure. Contrary to Russian expectations, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky rejected offers of safe passage out of the country and chose to stay in Kiev, vowing to lead the defense of Ukraine. His decision inspired the Ukrainian resistance, fostering a strong sense of national unity and determination to repel the invaders. Zelensky's leadership and the resilience of the Ukrainian people received widespread admiration and support from around the world. Despite initial gains, Russian forces faced fierce resistance and logistical challenges. By late March 2022, it became clear that the anticipated quick victory was not happening. Ukrainian forces managed to halt the Russian advance toward Kiev and launched successful counteroffensives, forcing Russian troops to withdraw from their northern regions, including areas around the capital. The war then shifted focus to the eastern and southern parts of Ukraine, where Russian forces had more success in consolidating their control. They captured key cities such as Mariupol after prolonged and brutal sieges. The Donbas region, already a hotspot due to the ongoing conflict since 2014, saw some of the heaviest fighting, with cities changing hands multiple times. By mid-2022, the conflict had evolved into a war of attrition. Both sides dug in, with Ukrainian forces conducting localized counterattacks and Russia fortifying its positions in the territories it had occupied. The Ukrainian military, reinforced by significant Western military aid, including advanced weaponry and intelligence support, managed to slow down and even reverse some Russian advances. As the war dragged on, the human and economic toll became increasingly severe. Civilian casualties mounted, and millions of Ukrainians were displaced, leading to a massive humanitarian crisis. The destruction of infrastructures and the disruption of global food supplies, particularly grain exports from Ukraine, had far-reaching economic repercussions. By June 2022, about 20% of Ukraine's territory was under Russian occupation. Entering 2023, the war showed no signs of a quick resolution. In September 2022, Russia unilaterally declared its annexation of 4 Ukrainian oblasts: Donetsk, Kherson, Luhansk, and Zaporizhia, amid the ongoing war. This occurred just after 2 successful counteroffensives by Ukraine in Kharkiv in the east and Kherson in the south, which resulted in the regain of some territory. With confidence from previous counteroffensives and logistical support from the West, Ukraine launched a full-scale counteroffensive in June 2023. However, after months of conflict, Ukraine only managed to regain control over small areas. Even President Zelensky stated that the counteroffensive didn't achieve the desired results. From the failure of Ukraine's counteroffensive in 2023 until the spring of 2024, despite ongoing conflicts and the gain and loss of lands by both parties, no significant territorial change happened on the ground. However, since April 2024, Russia once again started its advance. Despite Ukrainian resistance, Russia managed to move forward and occupy more land even if it was slow. The war of attrition is still ongoing. Tens of thousands of people have died since the beginning of the war, including more than 10,000 civilians. About 40% of Ukraine's population is displaced internally or has fled the country, leading to a severe humanitarian crisis. Ukraine has faced internal issues along with external challenges. President Zelensky recently dismissed General Valery Zaluzhny, Ukraine's top commander, due to tensions following the failed counteroffensive and renewed Russian attacks. Zaluzhny was replaced by Oleksandr Syrsky, who led the defense of Kiev and the counteroffensive in Kharkiv. This leadership change highlights the ongoing challenges in Ukraine's defense strategy. The question remains, will this war ever end? In the next video, we will cover this issue. Therefore, don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss it. Thanks for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you in the next video.